Welcome back to our Mailbag series. We had such a good time talking about Penn State football as we head into the final days before spring football that we're going to be doing a couple of these videos here. We'll see how many we get to. Fitz and I are having a great time discussing all of this stuff. So we're going to get right into the mailbag. I'm going to skip the graphics. You know what? No, because I did such a bad job on our first video. We're going to hit the graphics and then we're going to get into it. Okay, Fitz, this one is for you, and it has your name in it. So, I'm just interested to see what you have to say here. Lamgo wants to know, hey, Fitz, when are you going to post your annual recruiting big board? And he wants to know, can we have an expanded version? Because this is supposed to be a very large class, maybe upwards of 30 players. And if you go with a big board of 30, they're going to take 100% of the players on your board, maybe. So how are you viewing your big board this year, getting to know the staff, getting to know their recruits and all of this stuff kind of just like them? You're trying to have to bring a lot of different things together that are new in this transition to do something that fans love over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So how's that going? And what do you have as far as an answer to Lamgo's question?
It's very funny because, and I know he was around at this point, but looking back to when I did the big boards, when James Franklin took over, I think I did a big board of 32 or something like that. And it was just mind-blowing stuff because of how Penn State had recruited previously. And you think about going back to the written offers and all this kind of stuff that you used to wring your hands over, and you knew pretty much all the targets. And now it's just, spraying offers, and a lot has changed in 12 years. But that was such a mind-blowing thing at that point where I couldn't leave guys off, and Penn State was involved with so many people. And that's kind of how recruiting has morphed and taken on to the next level over those 12 years. So now it's going to be probably a little bit of the same. You're going to have big boards, if you will, probably going to split offense and defense. I'm not going to lie. When you take a look at, this is the nerd stuff, site analytics, people get tired of reading pretty quickly, and I write too many words, and those things don't go hand in hand great when you're talking about readership, when you're talking about all that stuff. But we'll do that at some point, probably April, get around to it. As Penn State continues to fill out its visitor list, you're going to see more of those targets come into play. Of course, there's a little bit of fool's gold with visits right now, because it's who can get the official visit. We used to talk about this all the time. I mentioned the written offers. Used to be verbal offers, and then you could get them at a certain date. And once those guys got those written offers, that's when it really meant something. Now it's just kind of everybody's got a check mark beside their name, and now you have to filter in which 50, 60 prospects are going to get official visits, and that's kind of your new written offer. So that's where you're at with trying to figure out what's real and what's not. Of course, you've got several things at play there. Guys all over the country, you're more likely to give, say, a defensive lineman in California an official visit, because that's probably your only shot.
Right.
And sometimes it works with players like that. Darius Dixon probably wouldn't be on that roster. His first trip to Penn State was his official visit, and he committed shortly thereafter. He's going to turn out to be a pretty good player. So there's a scattershot element to all of this, but at the same time, it's still recruiting, and there's still a process at play here. We're in March 2026, as I often remind you. So some names are going to fall off. Some names are going to rise up. We look at quarterback right now, completely different tangent here. And T-Fank, you keep baiting me into these things. But
it's been 2 minutes since I said anything. I love it.
Yeah. Your facial expressions have poured me into this one. Okay, so Peter Burke, top of the board guy right now, as a quarterback in 2027. There's only a couple of offers out there. We've talked about potential other opportunities, guys like Will Wood. Keegan Croucher's been out there who has an offer. But you're trying to figure all this stuff out. But I look back to the cycle where they went out and they found Ethan Grugmeyer. And Ethan Grugmeyer at this time during his recruiting process had an offer list that was mostly MAC, right? You could see there was some talent there. We saw him at camp the year before, but never really made that transition. Penn State right now offers to Bourque, Croucher, Will Menzel in Arizona, Cale Snyder, a Boise State commit in Arizona. I really don't think that he's an option right now, but it's essentially 3 quarterbacks right now. Jake Waters is going to go out this spring, and he's going to see a lot of guys throw. And that board, even though we know Peter Burke and think Peter Burke is a wonderful prospect and a top 100 kid, maybe your feelings change on him. And this is more of this is not me trying to tell you what's going to happen, but maybe a guy moves up, a guy moves down. It's all natural in recruiting. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just jump in here with a kind of synthesizing some of the things that you've said? And by the way, if you want to listen to Fitz talk with Alan True, we got that on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel as well earlier this week. And you mentioned to him, and you've talked about it before, these guys sticking with their evals. So let me give you a hypothetical. You mentioned Ethan Grunkmeyer kind of showing up in the spring of the year he committed. What if there's a guy that they feel is the exact same as Peter Burke and has all of the exact same tools, and maybe there's something about him that they like even more from a mental perspective? They feel like he might be a better processor, or he might have, just call it a clutch gene, just so I don't have to spend 5 minutes describing it. If they think that, could he become their number one quarterback, and suddenly Peter Burke, like, okay, we're not going to pay a whole lot of money if we feel like we have this hidden gem over here that's the same thing, and maybe even a little bit better if they determine that? Is that kind of what you're discussing, of like, there might be more discoveries here now that they're kind of settling into this region and these players and these prospects in this class?
Yes. Let me say one thing on the front end of that. I think Penn State's in a good spot for Peter Burke. They're going to get him back on for spring. They like him a lot, and they're going to continue to like him a lot. But those X factors that you talked about and you wrote about last week on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com about the $1 million question about quarterback come into play here. Like, can you don't want to moneyball every position, but if you find a guy that you think can stack up and be the same, let's say Madden rating as Peter Burke for half the price, I think that's worth exploring. And you're going to see Jake Waters go out and see some of these guys throw, and he very well may not find that guy. But at the same time, it's worth looking, it's worth exploring. So you're going to see boards fluctuate. I say stick to the evaluation, but the evaluation is an ever evolving thing, right? Your outside influences. I think when I say stick to the evaluation, outside influences being kept out is what I'm talking about, more so than, hey, we found this guy, we think he might be better than this guy. This staff, while we're on quarterbacks, is looking for the next Brock Purdy. Is Peter Burke the next Brock Purdy? I don't know. I don't necessarily look at his tape, and I didn't necessarily see Brock Purdy's tape when he was a high school prospect and think that this is going to be what's going to come. But they're going to get out there.
Can I jump in and add a little context there? I'd like to because I have a little bit of a feeling based off of what I've seen of Peter Burke, and it's simply that I mentioned processing earlier when we were talking about Peter Burke, because I think that's what his best skill set is. Now, admittedly, I haven't gone into the full film and eval, but like when looking at the three quarterbacks we've talked about here, he plays on time. He's got a strong arm. And I think that there are some of those instinctive things that are there. So it would take the reason I was like, hey, what if they found a Peter Burke that's Peter Burke, but more Peter Burke? And that would be very rare to find, because I think of those three, to me, those are the things I think they're looking for. And those are the traits that I think make him a strong candidate that are part of that Brock Purdy-esque of, it doesn't matter how big you are, it's do you play the position with a certain aggressiveness, intelligence, intangibility. And part of that to me is the IQ and the confidence to play on time. Throw the ball in the windows that you know are going to be there, not just the safest option, which you see a lot of times with quarterbacks. So
yeah, and
I wanted to jump in with that.
And I think that number one, that's why they're high on Will Wood in Massachusetts, a guy that's probably not the most physically imposing guy, but a lot of aspects of his game are pretty good, like the anticipation in his throws, the way that he can throw the ball despite not having the giant frame. Peter's close to 6'4", 195, so it's a pretty ideal frame. And again, I want to say this multiple times, because I think there are people that are going to watch this and feel like we're building you up to not building you up, but kind of letting you down easy on Peter Burke. I still think Penn State's fairly high on his list. Georgia's there. Virginia Tech's still on the list, which is interesting to me because, you heard those things about not wanting to play in that offense when, Penn State was in there. It's just an interesting sort of level there. But it continues to be an ever-evolving evaluation. You can go out and find those guys and sort of evolve what you're looking for, evolve what you might have on the roster. Of course, Peyton Falzone plays into this mix here in terms of he's a quarterback now. Is he a quarterback in a year? I don't know. I just think it's very interesting to look at this entire board everywhere and think that, okay, the prospects that, and this is part of that outside influence thing. The prospects that right now are the prospects that you've known about for the last 3, 4, 6 months. In Peter Burke's case, a year and a half. And you get attached to them and you think, okay, I know about this guy, so he's better. And that might not necessarily be the case. I mean, Michael O'Connor was Penn State's quarterback commit. And then all of a sudden, Trace McSorley comes in the same class. And you're not thinking about Trace McSorley being an all-time program legend and Michael O'Connor from IMG Academy, that the prototype guy is gone in a year, something like that. So like this is the kind of thing that you're looking at when you're talking about evaluation and evolving those evaluations throughout the process and at every position, really.
Hey, it's T-Fank. Quick reminder to like the video and subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube. This video is brought to you by BetMGM. Use bonus code ON3 and you'll get up to $1,500 first bet offer when you wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if you lose. Just make sure you use the bonus code ON3 when you sign up. That's ON3. Also, I know you're not going to get to see Penn State basketball in the tournament for like the 48th time in the last 50 years or so, but it is that time of year for basketball and the tournament, and there's no better place for March matchups than Vegas. This year, college basketball fans can win a VIP trip to the Court of Legends event featuring the Cavender twins. Simply place sports bets and position on your leaderboard will determine if you win one of the 25 grand prize packages. Just sign up using your BetMGM account, opt into the promotion, then start placing sports bets of at least $10 to climb the leaderboard. Join the Court of Legends leaderboard and make it legendary.
Have you heard of Way Fruit Farm? It's this great farm market bakery and cafe. You can shop with them either at their farm in Port Matilda or downtown State College.
No way.
Yes, Way Fruit Farm. They have all sorts of seasonal fruits and veggies.
Way cool.
No, Way Fruit Farm. But anyway, you should visit their bakery and cafe. They serve amazing food all day.
Way
Fruit Farm.
And then I have one final question here based on the question from Lamgoal and kind of our conversation about this particular cycle, because I do think that I'm still getting used to and understanding the things you're saying about this particular group of people that are recruiting for Penn State now. And so the final thing I have to ask about the big board and how many players, my initial thought was, is there going to be a retrenchment in the amount of offers that are given out and the amount of players that are pursued because they have a more specific scouting persona, or is that simply the transition we're going through right now? I guess, have you had a chance to study any of that stuff? And if no, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious about like that year one, trying to slap it all together quickly and kind of cobble together what you know from the Midwest, plus trying to know people out here, or is it more that they are going to be one or the other in that personality?
Yeah. First off, site plug here. If you go to Blue White Illustrated, you go to Penn State's 2027 offers. Ryan Snyder has gone through at most positions and cut down the number of offers that are listed because we tried to focus on what is there for the new staff. For example, last year's offer list had 17 quarterbacks. This year has 4. Like there's a clear delineation there between the amount of offers that go out and the amount of interest that they're showing in certain guys, rather than spraying the net wide. Now, I think that that's a meet in the middle thing. I do think Penn State is going to put out more offers at different positions. I do think that things, when they go out in the spring and see these different prospects, we talked on the show the other day about that New England showcase and how that can really work for several different programs all throughout the country, but it can really work in terms of expanding that offer list at different positions, finding those gems that you think are, potential players in your system. I think that all plays into it. But I think it's a meet in the middle thing where more offers will go out. And next year, when we're talking about the class of 2028, they've already offered a ton of 28 guys. So this seems like a transition year in that sense of we have a good understanding of the 2027 class. Because you think back to when they were at Iowa State, they were at this time last year scouting 2027 guys, offering 2027 guys. And so I think that is part of the process in terms of building it up now that they've got an advanced, larger, structured recruiting staff, that you have that opportunity to do so now and build out. So I think it's partially transition, but partially kind of the world of recruiting that we work in. And they're going to find out, like they found out at Iowa State, that you're not going to get listened to unless you make that first step. And the first step is the offer now. It's not necessarily the building the relationship and all that kind of stuff. The first step is, well, do you want me or not? Okay, now that you want me, we can talk and we can find out about each other a little bit more. So it's a work in progress, I think, on both ends.
Yeah, dating has changed too. Luckily, I never had to do that. I never had to do any of those.
I tell my wife that all the time. Like if I had to date right now, I'd be screwed just in terms of being, putting out offers and relationship building and all that stuff. Like I'm so very happy. I have friends my age that are not married. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it. And most of them don't.
Yeah. This one, we'll ask you this one here. So this is a very interesting question. G418 wants to know, how does a college GM handle freshman NIL so that they are not paying an exorbitant amount of money to kids who never see the field, yet you aren't missing out on prospects because you need to pay a certain amount to get a certain amount of quality player that is a certain amount of recruiting profile? I'm expanding on kind of the way G4 phrased this, but how do you view this very delicate balance and how they are handling it? Because I don't think that there's any one way that this is done, but how do you see Penn State with Derek Hoosier and Matt Campbell moving forward, trying to balance this ledger?
Buddy, if I had an actual answer for this, like a correct answer for this, I don't know that this would be on a mailbag. I'd be in one of those high-level GM positions that make 7 figures now or whatever. No, this is the question, right? This is the one that you risk versus reward versus position versatility versus value versus immediate playing time versus all this kind of stuff that factors in. And some of that stuff goes on the wayside because now all of a sudden you're going against Oregon, USC, Miami. Like there's no tried and true right way to go about this, because if you, as I mentioned earlier, if you try to Moneyball every position, you're going to find yourself with a lack of talent across the board.
Yep.
And you might like these guys, but at the same time, you need top level talent. This is the thing going back to the class of 2026 was like, okay, well, stick to your guns and do your whole thing. And the official visit season rolls around, and now all of a sudden you're getting outbid for everyone. Like, and that's tough, because how do you project to have a top 5 team or a top 10 team in 2 years when the top level talent, and not all of it hits and a lot of it doesn't, and a lot of it's going to be a crapshoot? How do you do that? It's chicken to the egg type stuff right there, right?
Yeah.
How is your roster more talented in 2 years when you're not cutting every corner, but you're trying to cut down on your spending up front? Now, I go back on the same side of, I see why they do it, because a guy, we talked about Manny Iannaccio that's going to Oregon, is he's going to get a 7-figure deal in year 1, and he might redshirt. He probably won't redshirt because I don't know what his deal would have said, but I don't think he's in line to be a starter. I don't think he's in line to play right away. Olu from New Jersey. I'm not going to try and pronounce that one on the fly. He is a wonderful, high-level, high-ceiling offensive tackle prospect.
Yep.
He's not going to play on a full-time level until probably 2028 at the earliest. And how do you go in and say, I'm going to spend a ton of money on a guy that's a freshman that's not going to play right away, or a guy that, maybe I can force myself to believe can play right away, when you're not going to get that return on investment, and you have a $30 million roster and you got to pay $1 million to somebody that's 1/30th of your roster. I'm not a math guy, but that's not smart spending. You saw it last year with Andrew Olish. Penn State paid him a lot of money and got that recruiting win and bought that recruiting win, and it was awesome. And he didn't play a snap this year. Now he's
might have liked Brandon Finney. Might have applied that money into Brandon Finney a little earlier in the process, right?
Correct. And
it's just like the crapshoot of being right. Like, I don't think Brandon Finney was an amazing athlete. I don't think anyone saw him winning a job at Oregon and being like as good as he was in his freshman season.
And I was as big of a fan of Brandon Finney as anybody, but jumping into a pool where you have a team that has that much talent, like Oregon, or we saw this year Miami or USC has talent, but then they made the most of it. When you jump into that pool, it's expected that you're going to have to wait a little bit. And I think Penn State has always kind of been that way, right? Penn State has been the situation where very, very few impact freshmen have come along. Now, when they do, they're great. They're wonderful. Positions, it's kind of all over the map in terms of what positions those guys can come in and have an impact on. There's no right answer to this question, because it hasn't been figured out. And if it did, then somebody has a time machine, maybe. I don't know. I think that sometimes when I see guys hit long odds bets and stuff like that, it's just like there's no way to
they got the Biff Almanac, right?
Yes,
they got the Sports Almanac. They come back and
I tell you what, I'm very shocked that you have a Back to the Future 2 knowledge, given your.
Are you kidding me? Oh yeah, that was a staple in my household growing up. See, I was born in the 90s, but raised halfway through the 80s because I grew up in the middle of nowhere America. So the 90s didn't get here until the 2000s. And so like I always grew up like a half decade behind. Also, I have like 4 older siblings. So back to our conversation the other day on the live show about how many rated R movies I saw before I was 12 years old is surprising.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the 2027 industry rankings on Rivals, and a bunch of those guys. I mean, number one's D-line. John Meredith is a corner at in Texas that Penn State was in on for a while. He's not going to go to Penn State, but I think that's a guy that could play right away. But you've got different guys. David Jacobs in Georgia is an Ohio State commit. He's 6'5" and a half, 225 is an edge commit. Is he going to step into Ohio State's defensive line room and play right away? Some guys can, some guys can't. We saw one guy that did this year at Penn State. Now he's at Tennessee. So. It's all over the place in terms of positional value, front-loaded deals, and things of that nature. That's why Keemon Spell goes against kind of what I was thinking in terms of smart spending and all that stuff. I'd said pay him because that's a guy that can probably play for you right away and can win you several different things from a Penn State perspective, from a perception perspective. I think that it's just all over the map because I'm looking at these 5-star guys, and a lot of these guys are going to be really, really good players. How many of these guys, is Anthony Sweeney a good counsel who we got at number 20 overall in the industry rankings? Is he going to step in right away and be an impact pass rusher for whatever that bag may be? I don't know. It's tough to rationalize some of this stuff when you realize that there's a roster of 105 guys and your playmakers are typically not going to be true freshmen. They're not going to be true sophomores sometimes. So I just think it's a hapless not a hapless question. It's a really good question, but it's a hapless process because a lot of it's going to turn to luck. And when you're relying on luck, sometimes it doesn't hit. So I'm fascinated to see how this all plays out, especially from a Penn State perspective, where you want to be smart with your money and you've got 15 teams above you that also want to be smart with their money, but also have more money. How does that work when you get to the end of your bid on eBay and the guy with bottomless pockets has already set his maximum bid well above what your maximum bid is going to be? So I think that's how you're looking at this. It's tough to go up against those curve busters, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these really, really rich schools. I won't say rich. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but these programs that have a lot of money. That's why they're
deficit spenders
on the rankings side. It doesn't always play out. Rankings are an indicator of how things may go and how things will likely go, but also not necessarily how they will go.
I have a couple thoughts here I want to follow up with because I do still in my mind think of myself as a GM. So I'm going to give you my pitch on how I'd handle all this stuff. But first, like the video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. And of course, check us out at bluewhiteillustrated.com. It's just $1. Fitz and I are on such a roll. We're going to be doing another video in just a second to bring you like full coverage this week from Blue White Illustrated's YouTube channel.
I'm glad my long-windedness could provide multiple items of content instead of just one.
When there isn't Ryan in the middle of us, like it seems like we just kind of go back infinitely. I love this because this is some high level football conversation. If I can be a little bit arrogant here to say like, I like talking to you about these things. The first thing is you mentioned, and I'm just going to come back to this, stick to your evals, right? So I want to give a couple of, these are going to be individual situational things of, Keemon Spell coming in as a 5-star freshman who's 6'1", 210 pounds, has the speed, has the power. There's nothing in the eval that says he can't play early, and there's nothing in the eval that says like he's an obvious bust candidate. Emmanuel Iheanacho is an interesting one. I would not have paid for Emmanuel Iheanacho because despite being 6'7", I wonder if he's a guard. And like, are you going to pay top of the dollar market money, set the bar for a guy that maybe that has to play on the interior because the lateral movement is not there. And again, I did not watch his senior film because he didn't commit to Penn State, but some of that stuff doesn't change. Like you just get, if he trimmed down or whatever it might be. I know that for Oregon, the bust ability, or the malleability, the positional fit doesn't matter as much when it's like, oh, well, that one didn't work. We still have 4 or 5 other guys and we can go to the portal if we need to. Positional value is the other thing. And I think that this team is very much emphasizing and building the trenches. So like, if you are going to spend a lot of money on a limited value resource, which then kind of dovetails into the second half of the moneyballing of this, there are fewer elite athletes that are big and fast and can play defensive line or offensive line than there are guys who can play skill positions. So just the volume and the variability of size that you can play corner or receiver does give you the option to recruit guys that aren't at the top of the board for receiver or corner or even safety. But if you're talking about like, where would I want to invest my future dollars? It would be in guys that I feel very strongly about that can play in the D-line. So maybe you don't see them for 2 years, but I know what I have going forward. As long as they don't go into the transfer portal, I know that I'm going to have that thing that is hardest to find. I'm going to give myself the best chance at hitting at those. And then if you're talking about, positional value, linebackers, things like that, you can, those are just, I don't want to say easier to find, because ultimately you're still looking for the most athletic, largest body you can find that fits the prototype for each position. But Blake Betton is a great example of a guy who plays safety, but is going to be a linebacker. You don't necessarily find defensive tackles that are playing middle linebacker right now. Most of them are obviously defensive tackles early in the process, and you don't want to miss on those players. But if you're going to be aggressive after a prospect, I would be aggressive after offensive tackles, maybe defensive tackle more than edge rusher, because again, there's a little more play in an Elijah Reeder showing up late, a late bloomer, as opposed to, maybe some of those defensive tackles where you just need to have that obvious mass opportunity on your frame. So that's my view of like how I would want to allocate, how I'd want to go forward. But you do need to splash at certain positions, because we saw what happened to Penn State the last 2 years in 24-25, and they missed on some of their best athletes at all these positions because they weren't willing to make a stand on what we will pay for from a recruit.
And you look back at, and this is where it's, really changed. You look back at past drafts, and there was a change, maybe around the turn of the century, maybe a little bit before that, where it turned into quarterbacks, tackles, edge rushers, basically. Like there's no outliers, I don't think, since Kajana Carter, really. I guess Keyshawn Johnson as a receiver in 96. So those have been the premium positions, and I agree with you 100%. Those guys are also coming in developed, and you're also looking at, and this is really interesting, the rookie wage scale changes things in terms of the NFL. When we think about building a college team, we think about using the NFL model, and that's kind of disingenuous, because this is more European soccer than anything, because those big clubs can go in and pay for a guy out of a youth academy in soccer and stash him and do whatever you want to do with him, develop him at that level. Whereas there's a draft in the NFL where you are certainly in alignment with the other teams that are on your tier in terms of record and things like that. So you're looking at more of a European soccer model here, where you're trying to figure out the value in what guys are going to come along. And then all of a sudden the transfer portal comes along, AKA the transfer window in soccer. And it changes some things. It changes how you spend. It changes your ability to spend. And Manchester City is spending a lot more than my club, and they're reaping the benefits of it because you can just build through that. So I think that's number one. Number two, you're talking about guys that are 17, 18 years old, and the amount of volatility in what is going to change with those guys over the 3 years or 4 years that you have them. And that's the thing. There's no fifth-year option. I mean, unless it's a red shirt, there's no fifth-year option for a five-star guy. You can't lock him down and necessarily know that he's going to be on your roster 5 years from now. So it's just, there's so much different there with that. Now, my second point here is you look at the 2026 team rankings on Rivals. There's two distinct themes here. Okay, number one was USC. USC splashed the pot last year. They decided, especially with the changeover in the House settlement, that they were going to throw everything at the 2026 class and kind of not worry about the roster as much. They took 35 guys and ended up with the top class nationally on Rivals. So that's a money class right there. Notre Dame spent more money than you would think, but also has a level of, we'll say, greatness that is among the top of the story, the appeal there. Ohio State, same way. They've got a ton of money. They don't spend it recklessly like some of the other teams that will be on there. They're just
trying to buy that success, buy that value of the winning on the field. You can pay for it in recruiting, but it is not a sustainable formula. You need to win and then lower your asking price.
The winning, yeah. So like number 2, Notre Dame, number 3, Ohio State, number 5, Georgia, number 6, Alabama, number 10, Texas. Among the top 10, those are schools that have a ton of money. Now, don't get me wrong. They have money to work with, but they don't go about and just kind of spray the money cannon and think that it can work. Now, number 1, USC, number 4, Oregon, number 7, Texas A&M, number 8, Miami, number 9, Tennessee. Forgetting about what Miami did this year to make the run to the national championship game, those are programs that are spending an inordinate amount of money to stockpile talent to either get back to where they've been in the past or to get on that level of those programs that I mentioned previously. So you're about 5-5 in terms of greatness, rich programs that have greatness that are appealing, that get you on that prospects list no matter what, because you're Ohio State, because you're Alabama, because you're Georgia, because you're Texas, like that. Those programs, we used to do it in the video and program prestige off the charts, but they also have money. And then the other 5 are big spending programs that are trying to capture all that. Now you get past number 10 and it's kind of the same way. You've got some outliers in there. You've got some regional programs. North Carolina finished 17, South Carolina finished 18. Texas Tech's 19 with 2 5-stars. There are just like all over the map. But you look at that top 10 and it's pretty clear that there are, number 1, spending at play, but number 2, it's not all of it, right? Ohio State had some guys that were committed before they talked money because they're Ohio State. The appeal is still there. Now Penn State wants to be in that group. Penn State would rather be in that group than be in the USC Oregon group. No, Oregon is a bit of overlapping greatness because they've had a ton of success, but at the same time, nobody's confusing them for little sisters of the poor here. So I'm very intrigued to see how this goes forward. Penn State, a lot of work to do. And as their budget goes up, guess what? So does everyone else's. So that's the thing you got to work around.
Love this conversation. No notes other than I made it sound like Ryan Snyder doesn't have high-level thoughts about football earlier. I merely meant that he has very blunt answers and is more to the point than both Fitz or I. So other than that, great conversation. And Ryan, love you. Absolutely don't think that you're a dummy in any way. And I know the reason I say this is because somebody would have taken it that way. And I didn't want to hear about it in the comments until I wanted to head it off fast. But anyway, that'll do it for now. We have another high-level football conversation coming up for you a little bit later here on our surprisingly fertile BWI Mailbag Spring Break series.